The cold in Chicago doesn't just bite, it gnaws. It seeps through the service entrance of the Lakeview Grand Hotel, past the industrial-grade weather stripping, and straight into my bones. My name is Ava Monroe. I'm 27 years old, divorced, and my most valuable asset is a 1999 sedan that smells like antifreeze. Tonight, I was invisible. That was the job. I'm part of the short-term contract crew for the setup. We haul the tables, polish the silver, and make sure the Blue Shield charity banners are hung straight. This event was a big one, crawling with politicians and the top brass of the Chicago PD, all raising money for the families of fallen officers. A noble cause, I guess. For me, it was $500, cash, that I needed to make sure my mother's dialysis copay didn't bounce again. The ballroom was sickeningly beautiful. Chandeliers dripped light onto centerpieces that cost more than my monthly rent. I was in the main lobby, just outside the ballroom doors, tasked with wiping phantom smudges off the brass fixtures. My shift was almost over, and I was just trying to blend into the marble, praying my supervisor wouldn't find a reason to dock my pay. Then I heard the laugh. It was a practice laugh, designed to be heard across a room, all confidence and polished teeth. I didn't need to look. I knew that laugh. My stomach turned to ice. Officer Brandon Keller, the department's Golden Boy spokesperson, was making his entrance. Brandon and I had been over for 6 months. The breakup was messy. Not because of screaming, but because of his quiet, suffocating contempt. He couldn't stand that I was still the help. He'd wanted me to leverage his connections, to stop scrubbing floors and find something respectable. When I told him paying my mother's medical bills was respectable, he'd looked at me like I was something he'd scraped off his boot. He wasn't alone. On his arm was Alexa Hart, daughter of the mayoral candidate. She was wrapped in dark green velvet, her smile as bright and empty as the flashbulbs popping around her. They were the perfect couple. The cop and the princess. I turned my back, scrubbing the same spot on the railing, my knuckles white. Don't see me. Don't see me. Don't see me. Ava, my God! His voice cut right through the orchestral music. I froze. Slowly, I turned around. Brandon's smile was tight, embarrassed. Alexa looked me up and down, her expression shifting from polite interest to dismissal when she saw my plain black uniform and the cleaning rag in my hand. Brandon, I said, my voice flat. You're working this? He asked, his voice low, as if I'd committed some terrible social crime. It's a job, Brandon. He winced, turning slightly to Alexa, dropping his voice into that patronizing murmur I knew so well. This is what I was telling you about. She has a hard time. Alexa's perfectly plucked eyebrow rose. Brandon stepped closer, away from his date, lowering his voice further, but the venom was clear. Jesus, Ava. Still clinging to the bottom rung, I thought you had more pride than this. Following me here, it's pathetic. Following him, the accusation hit me like a slap. My supervisor was just 10 feet away, watching this interaction. This wasn't just humiliation, this was a threat to the $500 I desperately needed. I'm working, I whispered, the words choking me. Sure, you are. He glanced at Alexa, who was tapping her foot, and then back at me. He raised his voice just enough for the people nearby to hear. Look, Ava, I know things are tough since the divorce, but you can't keep trying to latch on. You gotta find your own way. Latch on. The word hung in the air. Parasite, leech, gold digger. He'd painted me as a desperate ex, crashing a high-profile event to beg him for scraps. My face burned hot, then went numb. I could feel the eyes of the security guards, the registration staff, my own supervisor. I was going to be fired. I had to escape. I had to erase what he just said. My eyes darted around the lobby, searching for anything, anyone. And I saw him. He was standing near a marble pillar, separate from the crowd. He wasn't dressed like the guests, no tuxedo, no flashy watch. He wore a dark, impeccably tailored suit, but he wore it like armor, not decoration. He wasn't security. His stillness was too profound. He wasn't a guest. He wasn't schmoozing. He was watching. His eyes scanned the flow of people at the entrance. Analytical and cold. He looked like a wolf who had somehow gotten into the sheep pen and was bored by the selection. He was my only option. I didn't think. I just moved. I dropped the rag into my bucket and walked straight toward the stranger, my heart hammering against my ribs. Brandon was still talking, his voice fading as I moved away. "Ava, I'm serious. You need to leave." The stranger watched me approach. His eyes, a deep, assessing brown, met mine. He didn't look surprised. He just waited. I stopped right in front of him, so close I could smell the sharp, clean scent of expensive wool and something like cedar. I looked up at him. My entire future balanced on this one insane moment. I leaned in, as if sharing an intimate secret, and my voice came out as a desperate rasp. "Please," I whispered, my voice trembling, "pretend you love me, right now, in front of him." I expected him to push me away, to call security, to look at me with the same disgust as Brandon. He didn't. He didn't even blink. His gaze flickered over my shoulder, landing on Brandon and the now confused Alexa. He processed the situation in a single, silent second. I saw something shift in his eyes. It wasn't kindness. It was opportunity. Then he acted. His hand, large and impossibly warm, slid around my waist. It wasn't a polite, hesitant touch. It was firm, possessive, claiming. A jolt went up my spine, silencing the panic. He pulled me slightly against his side, tucking me against him as if we'd been standing this way all night. He dipped his head. His voice, a low rumble, meant only for me, though his smile was aimed at the room. "What's your name?" "Ava." "Damien," he murmured back. He then raised his voice, loud enough to carry, dripping with a smooth, manufactured affection that sounded utterly real. "I'm sorry I'm late, Kara." "Kara." He looked past me, his gaze locking onto Brandon. The predatory stillness I'd seen earlier was now focused, and it was terrifying. His face was unreadable, but the sheer weight of his attention made the air crackle. "Is there a problem here?" "Officer," he asked. His voice was quiet, polite, but it held an authority that Brandon's uniform couldn't touch. Brandon, who always had an answer, just stared. He saw the hand on my waist. He saw the expensive, understated cut of Damien's suit. He saw a man who was not impressed by a police badge. "I know," Brandon stammered. "No problem. I was just saying hello to an old acquaintance." "Good," Damien said. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a dismissal. He didn't smile. His hand tightened on my waist, turning us both away from Brandon. "We're needed in the VIP section." He started walking, and I had no choice but to move with him. He steered me right toward the velvet ropes that separated the plebeians from the whales. The security guard, a beefy man in a tight suit, saw us coming, looked at Damien, and immediately unhooked the rope. He didn't ask for a wristband, he just nodded. "Mr. Rinaldi, good to see you." Rinaldi. The name hit me like a physical blow. Oh, God, not the Rinaldis. The family that had run the unions and the docks for half a century. The family the papers were always dissecting, speculating whether their new, legitimate businesses were just a front. I had just asked the head of the Chicago Mafia to pretend to be my boyfriend. We were inside the VIP area. The music was softer here, the air warmer. I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. "Thank you," I managed to say, trying to pull away. "You can let go now. Not yet," he said, his voice low. His hand remained firmly on my waist. "They're still watching. Breathe. You look like you're about to be executed." I tried to inhale. The air smelled like champagne and old money. Flash. A bright light exploded in my face. I flinched, and Damien's grip tightened, holding me steady. A society reporter, one of those women with sharp teeth and sharper stilettos, was beaming at us. "Mr. Rinaldi, we didn't expect to see you supporting the Blue Shield, and who—" Her eyes raked over my simple uniform. "Is this—" Damien was smooth. He instantly repositioned me, turning me slightly so I was partially shielded by his body. He dipped his head, and before I could react, he pressed his lips to my cheek. It wasn't a peck. It was deliberate, slow, and shockingly warm against my cold skin. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like an hour. It was completely staged, a performance for the camera. But my stomach did a stupid little flip anyway. Click, flash. The moment was captured. "Just enjoying a quiet night with my partner," Damien said to the reporter, his voice like velvet. "We're always happy to support Chicago's finest." The reporter looked like she'd just won the lottery. She knew exactly who he was, and the sight of him holding me, a nobody in a janitor's uniform, was the scoop of the night. The lie was no longer just for Brandon. It was now on camera. Before the reporter could ask another question, my supervisor, the one who had been watching me get harassed by Brandon, hurried over, her face pale. "Oh, Miss Monroe," she gushed, her voice suddenly friendly. "We didn't realize. My goodness, you shouldn't be working. Please," she gestured vaguely. Why don't you stand over here, by the auction tables? As a guest, of course." In the space of 5 minutes, I had gone from invisible help to harassed ex to Damien Rinaldi's partner. I was numb, letting him guide me deeper into the VIP area. We stopped near the main auction stage, right beside a table groaning with high-end items. "What did you just do?" I whispered, finally finding my voice. Damien released my waist. Though he stayed close, the air around him felt charged. "You asked for a favor. I provided it. Now, just look impressed and try not to faint." He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the auction items. His eyes weren't on the diamond necklaces or the vacation packages. They were locked on the liquor display. The centerpiece was a single, dusty bottle of bourbon, Pappy Van Winkle, 23 years old. The opening bid was listed as $10,000. "That's a lot for bourbon," I said weakly, just to say something. "It's not about the bourbon," Damien said, almost to himself. "It's about the receipt." I watched him. He wasn't admiring the bottle. He was studying the donation ledger next to it, the list of who had provided the items. He angled his body slightly, shielding his actions from the room, and lifted his phone, and he wasn't taking a picture of me, or us. He snapped a quick, low-light photo of the ledger page. He lowered the phone and straightened his cuff, turning back to me. His eyes were dark and focused. The predatory calm returned. He looked at me, really looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time. "It seems, Ava Monroe," he said, his voice a soft, dangerous rumble, "that our little arrangement just became mutually beneficial. You needed a shield, and I," he glanced back at the bourbon, "needed a reason to be at this table." I stared at him, the reality of my situation crashing down. I had run from the simple, petty cruelty of Brandon Keller, and in my panic, I had thrown myself into the arms of a man who didn't just break rules, but likely owned the rule book. The lie I had told to save my job for one night was now anchoring me to a world I didn't understand, and a man I knew, instinctively, I should fear. The lie was hanging in the air, thick and heavy as the scent of $10,000 bourbon. Damien Rinaldi had just called our arrangement mutually beneficial, and I was staring at a bottle of liquor that was apparently the key to his kingdom. "What do you mean? The receipt?" I whispered, trying to pull my arm away. He didn't let go, but his grip loosened, becoming less of an anchor and more of a suggestion. He didn't answer me directly, and he was looking at his phone, at the picture he'd just taken of the donation ledger. He zoomed in on one line. "The Vescari family," he murmured, his voice so low I had to lean in to hear him. "They're old rivals. They always donate just enough to keep the police benevolent fund happy. But look." He angled the screen toward me. I saw a list of names and items. The Vescari line was for the case of Pappy, but it was the only one on the page written by hand. The ink was a bright, almost chemical blue. "It's blue ink," I said, feeling stupid. "So what?" "It's their blue," he said, as if that explained everything. "It's a bookkeeper's mark, a signature, not for the charity, but for his own people. It means the asset is live. It's sloppy. They're getting arrogant." Before I could ask what an asset was, The shark-toothed reporter was back, a different photographer in tow. "Mr. Rinaldi, you two are just the cutest couple, but honestly, no one here has ever seen you together. How did you two meet? It's the talk of the room." I tensed, ready for the lie to collapse. I was a janitor. He was him. What story could possibly bridge that gap? Damien smiled, a slow, easy smile that didn't reach his eyes. He turned to me, his hand moving from my waist to my back, his thumb drawing a small, warm circle through the cheap polyester of my uniform. It was disarmingly intimate. "It was in the parking garage, wasn't it, Kara?" he said, his voice dropping into that velvety, affectionate tone. I just stared, my mind blank. He chuckled, as if I were adorably shy. "I was arguing with the ticket machine at the Huron Street garage. This one," he said, tapping my shoulder, "was coming off her shift. She had a little smudge of something right here." He gently brushed my cheek, the same one he'd kissed, his touch sending a ridiculous shiver down my spine. "She paid my ticket, told me the machine was a crook." He looked back at the reporter. "I asked for her number to pay her back. She told me to just do something nice for someone else. I knew right then I wasn't letting her go." The story was insane, but the way he told it, the way he looked at me, with that specific detail of the smudge, it sounded real. It sounded true. The reporter ate it up, scribbling furiously. Across the room, I saw Brandon. His face was thunderous. He was no longer with Alexa. He was standing near the entrance, talking to the same beefy security guard who had let us pass. Brandon was gesturing, his cop mode fully engaged, pointing subtly toward Damien. The guard looked nervous, shaking his head. Brandon was running Damien's name. I knew that look. He was suspicious, and a suspicious cop was a dangerous thing. Suddenly, a deafening sound split the air. Whoop, whoop, whoop! The fire alarm. The room dissolved. People screamed. A server dropped a tray of champagne flutes, the sound of shattering glass cutting through the electronic shriek. My training kicked in, find the nearest service exit. I turned to run, but Damien's hand clamped onto my arm like a steel trap. "No," he yelled over the noise. "Not the service exit, main doors. Stay with me." He wasn't panicked. He was energized. His eyes were alive, scanning the chaos, not for danger, but for something else. He pulled me into the stream of panicked guests, keeping his body between me and the worst of the surge, shoving us against the wall, out of the main stampede. That's when I heard the woman cry out, "My baby, please, he's hurt." I looked. A wealthy woman in a sequin dress was trying to pull her son, a little boy maybe 8 years old, from the floor. He must have fallen on the broken champagne glasses. He was holding his hand, his small face pale with shock, and bright red blood was welling between his fingers. The crowd just flowed around them, a river of expensive suits and silk dresses, ignoring them. Damien stopped. He pushed me hard against the marble wall. "Don't move," he commanded. In 2 strides, he was at the boy's side. He crouched down, ignoring the woman's hysterics. "Let me see, son," he said, his voice firm but calm, cutting right through the boy's fear. He whipped a snow-white handkerchief from his breast pocket and pressed it into the boy's palm. "Hold this. Tight. You're doing great." The boy sniffled, but did as he was told. Damien looked at the mother. "He's fine. It's not deep." With a speed that was almost violent, he grabbed a clean linen napkin from a deserted table, ripped it into 3 long strips with his bare hands, and expertly wrapped the boy's hand, creating a tight, professional-looking pressure bandage. The entire thing took less than 15 seconds. "Get him to the stairwell. No elevators," Damien ordered the mother, helping the boy to his feet. "He'll be fine." He turned back to me, his face a mask again, and grabbed my arm. "Let's go." The man was a walking contradiction, a wolf who stopped to bandage a lamb. As we reached the main lobby, now swarming with security, I saw what Damien had been looking for. In the confusion, as guests poured out the front, 2 men in catering uniforms, men I had never seen in any of our crew meetings, were wheeling a heavy-duty dolly loaded with 3 wooden wine crates. They weren't heading for the front door. They were heading for a side loading dock. The alarm was still blaring, but they weren't rushing. They were methodical. One of the crates was stenciled Pappy Van Winkle, 23 years. Damien saw them. He slowed our pace, letting a cluster of coughing guests pass us. He didn't point. He didn't try to stop them. He just watched. He tracked them with his eyes until they disappeared through the dock doors. The alarm, I realized, wasn't an accident. It was a smokescreen, a distraction to move the real auction items while everyone else, including the cops Brandon was part of, was looking at the fire panel. We spilled out into the night. The air was frigid, the snow biting at my face. Fire trucks were pulling up, but the lack of smoke told me it was already over. It had been a false alarm. My utility cart, the one with my beat-up coat and my purse, was still parked by the service entrance where I'd left it hours ago. "I need my coat," I said, my teeth chattering. "Stay here. I'll get it." "No, you've done enough." I pulled free from him and ran across the slick pavement, grabbing my thin coat and my purse, my keys, my phone, the meager remnants of my real life. When I turned back, a black sedan that looked more like a tank with windows had pulled up to the curb. Damien was holding the back door open. "Get in, Dio," he said. "I'm taking you home." "I can take the bus." "It's 20 degrees, Ava, and you just walked into a war. Get in the car." I got in. The silence inside was absolute. The leather was buttery soft. We drove for several blocks before he spoke, his voice quiet in the dark. "The alarm was for the bourbon. The men you saw work for Santo Vescari. The bottle on display was a decoy. The cases they moved were the real product. This entire charity, the Blue Shield Fund, is how they're washing their money." I stared at his reflection in the window. "Why are you telling me this? What does this have to do with me?" "You asked me to pretend," he said. "The Vescari family will now assume you are with me, that you are mine." The possessiveness in his voice made my skin crawl. "I'm trying to make my family's business legitimate. My father and his father, they left a legacy I'm trying to clean. The Vescaris are old world. They like the violence, the shadows. They are my rivals. And now, they think you are my partner." He was admitting it. He was a Rinaldi, and he was at war with another family. He dropped me at my curb, the sedan disappearing into the night before I even reached my apartment door. I didn't sleep. My mind just replayed the alarm, the blue ink, the boy's hand, the look in Damien's eyes. The next day, I took my mother to her dialysis appointment. I sat in the waiting room for 4 hours, the smell of antiseptic burning my nose, reading a year-old magazine. This was my life. The Lakeview Grand felt like a fever dream. I got home after dark, exhausted and heartsick, and I saw it. Taped to my apartment door, number 304, was a plain manila envelope, no name. My hand started to shake. I tore it open. It was the picture from the reporter, the grainy close-up of Damien pressing his lips to my cheek, me, in my uniform, looking stunned, him, looking possessive. Written on the bottom, in that same unmistakable chemical blue ink, were 3 words. "Choose a side." I stumbled into my apartment, locking the deadbolt. This was Vescari. This was the mob. They knew where I lived. I pulled out the business card Damien had slipped into my coat pocket. Rinaldi Logistics. Just a name and a number. I called. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting. "They found me," I whispered, my voice cracking. "They left the picture. At my apartment." "Where are you?" "Home. Damien, you have to fix this. You have to tell them I'm nobody, that it was a joke." There was a long pause. "If I tell them you're nobody," he said, his voice flat and dangerous, "they will treat you like a loose end. That's worse. Stay there. Lock your door. I'm sending a car." "No," I shouted, surprising myself. "No more cars, no more of your world." I took a shaky breath, trying to channel the tiny spark of courage that had made me bandage the boy's hand. No, that had made him bandage the boy's hand. "I will help you one time," I said, the words coming out fast. "I'll tell you what I saw. The men, their faces, the logo on the catering uniforms, the exact time they left the dock, Everything I remember from last night. You use that to get them away from me. You use it to end this. Ava. That's the deal. I am not your Kara. I am not your partner. I am not a part of your world. I'll help you once to get me. And my mother out of this? Then you leave me alone. Forever. Another silence. Longer this time. I could hear him breathing. One time, and he finally agreed. You give me the intel. I get them to back off. It was a promise. But as I hung up the phone, I knew a promise from Damien Rinaldi wasn't freedom. It was just a different kind of leash. My one-time deal bought me exactly 48 hours of hollow silence. I gave Damien's driver, a man who didn't say a single word, my detailed memory of the catering crew. The exact time. 10:15 p.m. and the logo on their uniforms. Vescori Fine Imports. I didn't hear from Damien, but the world tilted anyway. It started with a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. Ava Monroe, this is Alexa Hart. My blood went cold. Brandon's new girlfriend, the mayoral candidate's daughter. Yes. Listen, Ma, she said, her voice all business, no malice. I heard what happened with Brandon the other night. I know, he can be well. He's a cop. Very protective. Anyway, I was impressed with how you handled yourself. My father's campaign is ramping up, and we're absorbing the Blue Shield event planning. I need an assistant event coordinator, someone who knows the venues from the ground up. I was standing in my tiny kitchen, holding a past-due electric bill. I'm a janitor. Miss Hart. I know, and you wouldn't be. The salary is double what you're making now. Full benefits. We'd start you immediately. Double my pay. Benefits. Enough to cover Mom's medication and the rent. It was a life raft. But it was being handed to me by the woman standing next to Brandon. And it was coming 2 days after I was photographed with Damien Rinaldi. Why me, I asked, my voice flat. I like people who are unflappable. You're unflappable. Ava, think about it. My office will send you the paperwork. She hung up. The offer was too good. It was a setup. It was a way to buy me, to own me, to pull me out of Damien's orbit and into theirs. The Hart political machine, I was realizing, was tied to the Vescari family. Santo Vescari, the man whose name Damien had whispered, was buying his political protection from Alexa's father. An hour later, as if on cue, Brandon Keller showed up at my apartment door. He wasn't in his uniform. He was wearing jeans and that smug, pitying look I hated. I heard you got the call from Alexa, he said, leaning against my door jamb. How did you, Brandon? You need to leave. Just listen, Ava. Take the job. His voice was low, conspiratorial. It's a good deal. Alexa likes you. I don't believe you. His face hardened. The nice guy PR mask slipped. I'm trying to help you. You're in over your head. That guy you were with, Rinaldi. He's poison. You're a witness to God knows what. He helped me when you were humiliating me. Brandon. He used you, he hissed, stepping closer. Take the job. I can make things easier. I saw your mom's car. It's got, 3-4 unpaid parking tickets from the clinic garage. I can make those disappear. All of them. Just take the job. Get away from him. It was a bribe. He was using my mother's illness to manipulate me. My stomach roiled. Get out, Brandon. Don't be stupid, his voice rose, a sharp, angry crack. You think this is a game. That picture of you and Rinaldi, the one of him kissing you, it's everywhere. The society pages are eating it up. He pulled out his phone and showed me the article. Rinaldi's new mystery woman. There I was, looking shocked and small, in his embrace. Right now, Brandon said, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper, you're just a mystery. But I can fill in the blanks. I can tell them all about the desperate ex who scrubs floors, the one who latches on. I can paint a very clear picture of a gold digger. Your new job offer from Alexa. It'll vanish. Your old job gone. Think you can pay for dialysis then? My hand was shaking. This was the man I'd once thought I loved. He wasn't protecting me. He was caging me. Leave, I said, my voice dead. He stared at me, his eyes cold, and finally, he left. I locked the door, my back sliding down the wood until I hit the floor. I was trapped. The Vescaris on one side, with their blue ink threats, Brandon and the Hearts on the other, with their smiling bribes and public threats. And in the middle, there was Damien. I called his number. He knows. Brandon, he threatened me. He offered to erase my mother's tickets if I took a job with his girlfriend. The silence on Damien's end was heavier this time. This is what they do, he said finally. Santo Vescari and the Hearts, they're partners. They're trying to pull you away, to isolate you. Don't take the job. And do what? I cried. Wait for him to ruin me. Wait for your rivals to send another threat. I'm handling it, but you need to be smart. From now on, there are 3 rules. First, no routines. Don't leave your apartment at the same time every day. Don't take the same route to your mother's clinic. Second, nothing online, no posts, no check-ins, nothing. Third, his voice grew more intense. You will save this number under a different name. If you are ever in real trouble, if you even feel wrong, you call it day or night. Understand? I agreed. The next day, he sent a car, not the luxury sedan, but a boring gray hatchback to take me to his office. Rinaldi Logistics was a sterile, glass and steel building in the West Loop. It screamed legitimacy. His office was on the top floor. A woman was waiting for us. She was in her late 50s, with severe black hair pulled into a tight bun and a suit that looked like it was spun from iron. This is Rosa Rinaldi, Damien said. My aunt. She runs the company. Rosa Rinaldi, the chief financial officer. She didn't offer to shake my hand. She just stared at me, her eyes missing nothing. So, you're the one, she said. Her voice was flat. The one who just put a target on our entire restructuring plan. Rosa, Damien warned. No, Damien, we are 90% legitimate. We are this close to closing the wine and spirits division for good, and you walk into a Vescari-funded event and pick up a janitor. She said the word like it was a disease. She's a liability. Santo Vescari doesn't make threats. He sends bait, and you bit. She's not bait, Damien said. She's an asset. She's the one who saw the blue ink. She has an eye for things we're too close to see. An eye for what dirt, Rosa scoffed. I was shaking, but not from fear, from anger. I saw more than the ink, I said, my voice quiet but shaking with rage. I looked at Damien. You're at war, but you're fighting like soldiers. They're fighting like criminals. You're looking for strategies. They're looking for shortcuts. I pointed to a stack of surveillance photos on his desk, likely of the Vescari crew. One was a close-up of a different case of expensive wine. That label, I said, pointing. It's wrong. Damien and Rosa both looked. It's a vintage from 1982, Damien said. What's wrong with it? The tax stamp, I said. It's glued on top of the foil, but for that year, for that specific winery, the tax stamp was always under the foil. We had a guy at the hotel who collected them. He taught me. That bottle is a fake, or at least, it's been tampered with. The contents are probably cheap, but they're using the label to move the money. They're not just moving bourbon, they're moving fakes. You shouldn't be looking at their books. You should be checking their entire warehouse inventory. Every bottle. The silence in the room was absolute. Rosa stared at me, her expression unreadable. Damien looked at me with a new, dangerous level of interest. He realized I wasn't just a victim. I was useful. The ride home was quiet. The gray hatchback dropped me a block from my apartment. Per the new rules, it was snowing again. The wet, heavy flakes that make Chicago winters a misery. I was walking the last stretch, my head down, when I saw it. My car, my 1999 sedan. All 4 tires were slashed. They weren't just flat, they were destroyed, stabbed repeatedly, the rubber hanging in ribbons. I stopped, the snow melting on my face, my breath catching in my throat. This wasn't Brandon's petty threat. This was Vescari. And there, placed perfectly in the center of the hood, wiped clean of snow, was a single, black chess piece, a rook, the castle. A message. We can move in a straight line. We can get to you. There is no hiding. This was the work of the bishop, Vescari's enforcer. My first instinct was to call the police, but I stopped. Who would I report it to? The police. The department where Brandon was the golden boy. He would twist it. He would say I was involved in something shady, that my new Mafia boyfriend was the problem. He would use this to prove his gold digger story. I was completely, utterly alone. I leaned against a frozen lamppost, my knees weak. I called Damien's emergency number. I didn't have to say a word. "Your car," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "I have a man 2 blocks away. He saw it. Did he leave it?" "A chess piece," I whispered. "A rook." Damn him. The line went quiet for a second. "Go inside. Lock your door. Do not leave. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He wasn't lying. 10 minutes later, his black sedan pulled up. He got out, looked at my car, and his face was a mask of cold fury. He came to my apartment door. "He's sending a message," Damien said, not even bothering with hellos. "I got the message," I said, my voice bitter. "Now I have no car. How am I supposed to get my mother to her appointment tomorrow at 6 a.m.? "I'll take you." I stared at him. "What?" "I will be here. At 5:30 a.m., I will drive you to your mother's apartment, and I will take both of you to the clinic. He wanted to ground you. He wanted to make you vulnerable. We will show him that you are not." The next morning, at 5:29 a.m., the black sedan was outside. It was still dark, the snow falling. I got in. We drove to my mother's small apartment in silence. "Wait here," I said. "You'll scare her." "I'm coming in, Ava. I'm not letting you out of my sight." He followed me up the creaking stairs. My mother was waiting, bundled in her old coat, her chemo beanie pulled low. She looked so small. "Ava, honey, who is this?" she asked, her voice frail but suspicious. "Mom, this is Damien. He's a friend. Our car, it had a problem. He's giving us a ride." Damien stepped forward, and the wolf I knew from the hotel, the cold strategist from the office, vanished. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile. He took off his expensive leather gloves. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Monroe," he said, his voice soft. He took her arm, not in a rush, but as a steady support. "The sidewalks are a mess. Let me help you with the stairs." My mother, who trusted no one, looked at him and her whole body seemed to untense. She leaned on him. "Well, aren't you a gentleman? Thank you, young man." I watched him. He held her arm, carefully guiding her down the icy steps, one by one, shielding her from the wind with his own body. When we got to the car, he opened the door, helped her in, and made sure her seatbelt was secure before he even looked at me. We drove to the clinic. He talked to her, not about money or business or danger. He asked her about the book she was reading. He listened, really listened, as she complained about the hospital's bad coffee. He made her laugh, a small, dry chuckle that I hadn't heard in months. When we arrived, he helped her out and into the wheelchair the clinic provided. "I'll be back to pick you up at 10, he told her, patting her hand. "Thank you, Damien," she said, smiling up at him. "You're a good man." He watched her get wheeled inside. I stood next to him, my world spinning. This man, who was the reason my car was destroyed, the reason a man named the Bishop had targeted me, the reason I was trapped in a war, had just been more tender and patient with my dying mother than Brandon ever had been in 2 years. The lines I had tried to draw, the one-time deal, the "I'm not part of your world," they were all blurring. He was a monster. But he had just held my mother's hand, and in that moment, I didn't know which one of them was the real Damien Rinaldi. My one-time deal was a fiction I had told myself. Watching Damien Rinaldi drive my mother home from dialysis, watching him treat her with a tenderness that cost him nothing and meant everything, I knew I was already in. The line I had drawn in the sand had been washed away. My observation about the fake tax stamp had changed the air in Rosa Rinaldi's office. I was no longer just the janitor. I was, as Damien had put it, an asset. "My people confirmed it," Damien told me 2 days later, in the sterile quiet of his logistics office. "Your tip about the stamp was good. The Vascari imports are riddled with fakes. They're using the Calumet warehouse as their primary clearinghouse. They're getting ready for a massive private auction to liquidate the fakes, wash the money, and clear the evidence, all before the feds connect the Blue Shield Fund to them. Rosa, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. We're setting up our own buyers, a sting. We need to intercept their transaction ledger. We need to prove the cash for fakes link. Then Damien looked at me. I need your eyes, Ava, not just your memory. You see things other people miss, the details. The plan was simple and insane. I wouldn't be Ava Monroe, the suspended janitor. I would be Anna, a temp auditor hired by the Rinaldi-owned catering company that was servicing the auction. I'd have a clipboard, a white lab coat, and one job: get into the manifests and find the serial number discrepancies I'd spotted on the photo. I was the proof they needed that the inventory was fraudulent. The Calumet warehouse was nothing like the Lakeview Grand. It was a concrete tomb on the south side, smelling of damp cement, old wood, and the faint, sweet, sour scent of spilled wine. It was freezing, my breath pluming in the air. Damien was there, not as a boss, but as security, wearing a dark jacket, blending into the shadows. Rosa was in a small, windowless office, her laptop hardwired into the building's network, trying to access the Viscari servers. My heart was a hummingbird trapped in my throat. The auction was quiet, just a few high-roller types, all Rinaldi plants milling around, inspecting crates. I just had to look busy, check the boxes, and find the fakes. I found them on the third aisle, a full pallet of Chateau 1982, just like the one from the surveillance photo. I checked the manifest, then I checked the serial number stamped on the wooden crate. They were different. The manifest number ended in a 7. The crate number ended in a 9. A simple data entry error, if you weren't looking. A massive, glaring red flag if you were. This was it. This was the proof. I looked up, trying to catch Damien's eye, and that's when I smelled it. It wasn't wine. It wasn't dust. It was gasoline. A whoosh sound echoed from the far end of the warehouse. It wasn't a sound. It was a pressure change. A wall of wine crates, stacked 20 feet high, erupted in a tower of orange flame. "Fire!" someone screamed. The lights clicked, sputtered, and died, plunging the warehouse into a flickering, hellish darkness. The heat was instant, a physical blow. Men were shouting, running in panic toward the main loading bay, the way we'd come in. "No!" I screamed, my voice raw. "The fire is blocking the bay. You're running into it." The smoke was already thickening, turning from gray to oily black. I looked up. The sprinklers. Nothing. Not a single drop. Viscari wasn't just destroying a few crates of evidence. He was destroying the entire building. He was sanitizing. My hotel training, the endless, boring safety drills, kicked in. I had walked this building twice when we arrived. I had memorized the layout. "The east wall," I shouted, grabbing the arm of a terrified man in a suit. "Through the cold storage, there's a manual exit." Damien found me in the chaos, his face a mask of fury. "Ava, I'm getting you out, now!" He grabbed my arm, his grip like steel. "Not without them," I yelled, pointing to 2 of the other auditors who were coughing, disoriented. "I know the way, follow me, stay low." I grabbed the front of Damien's jacket and pulled. We moved through the aisles, the roar of the fire growing. The smoke was a living thing, clawing at my throat. A man was on the floor, half hidden by a collapsed shelf. He was wearing a Viscari security uniform. He was unconscious, overcome by the smoke. Damien didn't even slow down. "Leave him!" he growled, pulling me. "He's one of them." "No," I snapped, pulling back. "We don't do that." I grabbed the guard's arm. "We don't leave people to burn. Damien, help me." For a second, he just stared at me, his face illuminated by the approaching flames. I saw the wolf, the strategist, warring with the man who had held my mother's hand. The man won, cursing. He hooked his arm under the guard's other shoulder, and together we dragged the dead weight. We reached the heavy, insulated door to the cold storage unit. Rosa was there, not running, but frantically yanking a portable hard drive from her laptop station. "I'm not leaving the clean ledgers," she screamed at Damien over the roar. "This is our entire legitimate structure. If the fire takes this drive, the feds will tie us to their crimes forever." "To hell with the ledgers. Rosa, get out," Damien yelled. "It's everything we've worked for." A figure stepped out of the smoke, blocking the steel doorway. He was tall, dressed in dark work clothes, and his face was terrifyingly calm. He held a pistol. I didn't need to see the chest piece to know it was the bishop. He raised the gun, not at Rosa, not at the hard drive. He aimed it directly at me. "The girl," he said, his voice flat, almost bored. "The loose end." Damien moved. He didn't hesitate. He shoved me sideways with all his strength, sending me crashing behind a stack of steel barrels. The crack of the pistol shot was sharp and ugly. It echoed in the concrete room, louder than the fire. I scrambled up, my ears ringing. Damien was leaning against the wall, his hand clutched to his left shoulder. A dark, wet stain was spreading rapidly across his jacket. He'd been too slow. Or, no, he hadn't been shielding himself. He had been shielding me. The bishop took a step, raising the gun again, this time aiming for Damien's head. I didn't think. I lunged for the wall bracket, right where I'd seen it on the safety map. The heavy, red fire extinguisher. I ripped the pin out with my thumb. He turned at the sound. I squeezed the handle. A massive cloud of white, freezing CO2 foam blasted him in the face. He roared, a sound of pure rage. Blinded, he fired wildly, a shot sparking off the ceiling. "Now, Damien, move." I grabbed his good arm, pulling him. The electrical room, I saw it this way. I yanked him into a small, concrete closet set into the wall, a room I'd noted as a fire-safe zone. I slammed the heavy steel door just as the bishop fired again, the bullet ricocheting off the metal. We were plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. The only sounds were the muffled roar of the inferno outside and our own ragged breathing. "You're hit," I whispered, my hands shaking. "It's just a graze." He grunted, but I could feel the tremors of pain running through him. "It hit the shoulder. I'm fine." I fumbled in my lab coat pocket for my phone, trying to turn on the flashlight. The screen flared to life, blinding me. It was already on, and it was recording. I must have hit the video record button when I first smelled the smoke, thinking I was turning on the flashlight. The screen was playing back the last 2 minutes. Shaky, chaotic footage. But it was there, the bishop, standing in the doorway, him, aiming the gun. And before that, just for a second, a clear shot of him, in the aisle, pouring the last of a gas can onto a stack of crates. "Damien," I whispered, my voice breaking. I got him starting the fire." The handle on the steel door rattled violently. He was outside. "Here." I jumped, a third voice. From the darkest corner of the tiny room, Rosa Rinaldi. She was huddled by the main breaker boxes, her laptop open and glowing. She must have slipped in right behind us. "Give me the phone now!" I handed it to her. The banging on the door was getting more frantic. "Upload it," Damien commanded, leaning heavily against the wall. "Our legal cloud, the encrypted one. Now, Rosa." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "Connecting, uploading. It's fast. 90%. The banging stopped. Instead, we heard new shouts, distant, and then the unmistakable, beautiful wail of sirens. Woo, woo, woo. The fire department. The bishop was gone. We waited, counting 5 full minutes in the dark, before Damien slowly unbarred the door. The warehouse was unrecognizable, a cavern of smoke, water, and flashing lights. Firefighters in full gear were everywhere. They swarmed us, a lieutenant yelling questions, EMTs grabbing Rosa and me. I helped Damien, his arm draped over my shoulder, his weight heavy, the blood from his shoulder now soaking the front of my white coat. We stumbled out of the main loading bay, into the blinding flash of red and blue lights. And I saw him. Officer Brandon Keller, in full uniform, his face grim, talking to a fire captain. His head snapped around as we emerged from the smoke. His eyes locked on me. He saw the soot on my face, the auditor's coat, the Viscari guard we dragged out, now being worked on by medics. Then he saw Damien, leaning on me, shielding me, his blood covering my front. Brandon's face crumpled. It wasn't suspicion, it wasn't anger. It was a deep, acidic jealousy, a twisted confirmation of the gold digger story he'd tried to spin. In his eyes, I had made my choice. The next day, my supervisor from the Lakeview Grand called. "Ava, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice stiff and cold. "The police have listed you as a material witness in a federal arson and organized crime investigation. We have to suspend your contract, effective immediately. It's a conflict of interest." I hung up the phone. I was officially unemployed. I had saved the Rinaldi's entire legitimate business. I had the evidence that could burn their rival. And I had just lost the only job I had. I was trapped. Getting fired was the last shred of my old life turning to ash. The conflict of interest was just a polite, corporate way of saying, "You've been swimming in the shark tank, Ava, and now you smell like blood." I was unemployable. I was at Rinaldi Logistics, in the glass-walled office that felt like a cage. Damien stood by the window, his left arm in a black sling. The clean white bandages from the bishop's bullet graze a stark contrast. The video I had taken in the warehouse, the grainy, chaotic footage of the bishop setting the fire, was playing on a silent loop on a large monitor. Rosa, his aunt, sat at the table, her face carved from stone. "The call came at 3:15 in the afternoon," Damien answered, his eyes never leaving the window, and put the phone on speaker. The voice that filled the room was like gravel and old-world entitlement. "Rinaldi, you have my attention." It was Santo Viscari. "You have a very creative little movie," Viscari continued, his tone mocking. "And my employee, the bishop, is apparently recovering from an injury. A messy business." "What do you want? Santo?" Damien's voice was flat. "A trade. You have your video. I have a long memory. You give me the digital ledger, the real one, your father's, your grandfather's, everything, all the old accounts. You give me that, and I forget about the girl." My blood turned to ice. "I forget her name," Viscari said, his voice dropping. "I forget her address. I forget her mother's dialysis schedule." I couldn't breathe. He was threatening my mother. He knew her schedule. The silence in the room was absolute. Rosa spoke first, her voice firm. "Give it to him, Damien." Damien turned, his face a mask of disbelief. "Absolutely not." "Listen to me." Rosa stood up, her hands flat on the polished table. "That ledger is our past. It's poison. It's the anchor we are trying to cut. This man, Santo, he's threatening an innocent civilian. He's threatening her mother. We are trying to build a legitimate company. Legitimate people do not sacrifice innocence. We protect them. Give him the past." "No." Damien slammed his good hand on the desk. The monitor rattled. "If I give him that ledger, he owns us. He owns the Rinaldi name forever. It is legal suicide. He will bleed us dry for 20 years. And when he's done, he'll give it to the feds anyway. We don't negotiate with men like that. We cut them out. We cut the past." "He will harm that woman," Rosa yelled. "He will destroy our future," Damien roared back. "Stop!" My voice was a whisper, but it cut through their argument like a razor. They both froze, staring at me. "You're arguing about your family," I said, my voice shaking. "He's holding my family. You will not trade my mother for your company." I looked at Damien, the man who had held my mother's hand. "And you," I said to Rosa, "will not trade my life for your past." I took a deep breath. He wants a trade. He wants the video, and he wants the ledger. Where? Damien's eyes were dark, assessing me. Navy Pier, the east parking structure. Midnight. "I'm coming with you." "No," Damien said instantly. "You're the target. Ava. You'll be safe here." "Safe," I let out a harsh laugh. "I haven't been safe since I walked into that hotel lobby. I am the only one he'll trade for. I am the only one who can identify the bishop. I started this. When I was in that lobby, I was a coward. I ran to you, and I whispered, 'Pretend you love me.' That was 5 minutes of pretending, to save my pride." I walked up to him, close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes. This has to be 5 minutes of courage. If 5 minutes of pretending started this, then 5 minutes of courage has to end it. I am not hiding. Not while he has my mother. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that we weren't the only ones planning a meeting. Brandon Keller, consumed by his own toxic brew of jealousy and ambition, hadn't stopped digging. He'd been using departmental resources to track Rinaldi's movements. When he saw chatter about a high-level meet, Rinaldi and Vascari converging on Navy Pier, he saw his chance. He called in a favor, not to his precinct, but to a federal task force. Warning of a war. He was setting a trap to catch both sharks in one net, with himself as the hero. Midnight at Navy Pier in a Chicago blizzard is the end of the world. The wind coming off Lake Michigan was a physical entity, a screaming ghost that drove the snow horizontally. Visibility was less than 10 feet. The city lights were just a dull, orange glow behind the curtain of white. I was in the back of Damien's sedan. Rosa was beside me, a laptop open, glowing. Damien was driving, his injured arm held tight against his chest. We rolled into the east parking structure. It was empty, a concrete tomb echoing with the howl of the wind. A single pair of headlights flashed, a black SUV. Santo Vascari got out, flanked by 2 men. He wore an expensive overcoat, unfazed by the cold. "Where is she, Santo?" Damien yelled, getting out, his good hand visible, empty. "Insurance," Santo smiled, a thin, cruel expression. A side door on a dark van, parked in the shadows, slid open. My heart stopped. It was the bishop, and he was holding my mother. She was in her old coat, her chemo beanie pulled low. Her face was pale with a terror I had never seen. "No!" I screamed, fumbling for the door handle. "Mom!" Damien's head snapped back. "Santo, that was not the deal." "The deal changed," Vascari shouted over the wind. "The girl walks over. She brings the drive with the ledger. The bishop lets the old woman go. Simple." It was a lie. I knew it. The moment I was in his grasp, he would take us both. My mother was shaking, her eyes wide, locked on me. She fumbled in her coat pocket. "Ava!" she whimpered. "My sugar. I need—" She was trying to get her glucometer, her blood glucose meter. An idea, insane and desperate, born of the fire and the lies, flashed in my mind. "Wait!" I shouted. I got out of the car, stepping into the freezing wind. "He won't let her go. He'll take us both." I locked eyes with my mother. "Mom, take it out of your pocket. Slowly hold it in your hand." The bishop tensed, his arm tightening around her throat. "What is this? What is she doing?" My mother's trembling hand pulled out the small, black plastic device, a digital screen and a single button. I put my hand into my own pocket, as if I were holding something identical. "It's a dead man's switch. Santo," I yelled, my voice a high-pitched, terrified bluff. "It's tied to the video, the full one, the one from the warehouse. If her hand lets go of that button, the entire video, the part showing your face giving the order, it goes to every news outlet in Chicago. Not just the feds, everyone." Santo froze. The bishop looked confused. "It's a blood meter, you idiot," the bishop growled at Santo. "Is it?" I screamed, my voice cracking. "Do you want to find out? Let her go, and I'll walk over. I'll trade. You get me. But let her go." My mother was crying silently, but she held the meter up, her thumb on the button, like it was a grenade. Santo stared, his mind racing, the blizzard howling around us. He couldn't be sure. The bluff was too specific. "Fine," he finally snapped. "Let the old woman go." The bishop snarled and shoved my mother. She stumbled, falling to her knees on the icy concrete. "Mom, get in the car. Get in the car with Rosa," I screamed. The second my mother was 2 feet away, the world exploded. A sheet of white snow, a wall of wind, blasted through the garage, dropping visibility to 0. "Now, Rosa," Damien yelled. I didn't run to Santo. I turned and ran back toward Damien's car. A shot exploded. Crack! The bishop, enraged, was firing, not at me, but at Damien. Another shot, then a grunt of pain. Someone tackled me, shoving me hard behind a concrete pillar. "Ava, get down!" It was Brandon, in a tactical vest, his service pistol drawn, his face red with cold and fury. "What are you doing here?" I screamed. "He has my mother." "SWAT is moving in," he yelled. "They're on the roof. They can't see the blizzard." Another shot. I peered out. Damien was on one knee, his good arm firing back at the bishop, who was using the van for cover. Brandon cursed, his breath pluming. He looked at me, then at the firefight. "Cover me," he yelled. He wasn't talking to me. He was yelling at Damien. Brandon broke from cover, running low, trying to get a flanking angle on the bishop. The bishop saw the movement. He stepped out, ignoring Damien, and aimed at Brandon's exposed back. "No!" Damien surged to his feet, firing his last two shots, forcing the bishop to turn. The bishop spun, firing twice at Damien. Brandon stopped, planted his feet, and fired 3 perfect, controlled shots. Pop, pop, pop. The bishop's gun clattered to the pavement. He roared, clutching his shoulder, and fell against the van. It was the most surreal thing I had ever seen. Damien and Brandon, my past and my present, my humiliation and my impossible complication, working together for 3 seconds to take down a monster. I didn't wait. I ran to our car. "Mom, get out the boat deck. It's solid cover." I pulled her and Rosa from the car, shoving them through an emergency exit, out onto the wooden deck of a docked tourist boat, shielding them behind a solid steel bulkhead. I ran back, my heart pounding. Santo Vescari was screaming, his plan in ruins. "Get Rinaldi. Get the drive." Rosa stepped out from behind the sedan. She was holding her laptop. "It's too late, Santo," she shouted over the wind. "What?" he snarled. "The dead man's switch," she said, her voice cutting. "It wasn't the girl's. It was mine. The system triggered the moment a shot was fired. It's linked to Damien's heart rate monitor. If he flatlines the entire Rinaldi ledger, the real one, it goes straight to the U.S. Attorney's office. Untraceable." Santo's face went white. Rosa smiled, a cold, terrible expression. "If he dies, we all go down. But if he lives, only you go down." Santo's leverage was gone. He couldn't kill Damien. He had lost. As if summoned by her words, the world flooded with light. Armored vehicles blocked the exits. Figures in black tactical gear rappelled from the roof beams. "Hands in the air, FBI, do it now." It was Brandon's team. They swarmed the structure, their movements fast and professional. Santo Vescari slowly raised his hands, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. They cuffed him. They secured the bishop, who was bleeding and cursing on the ground. "That's him," I shouted, pointing at the bishop, my voice raw. "He's the arsonist. He set the fire at the Calumet warehouse. I have the video. He's the one." An agent looked at me, then at Brandon, who nodded, his face grim. "She's the material witness. The video is clean." It was over. I ran to Damien. He was slumped against a pillar, his face pale, but he was breathing. The shots had missed. He was just exhausted. An agent approached us, his face hard. He didn't look at me. He looked at Damien. Mr. Rinaldi, you're not hit." "I'm fine," Damien grunted. "Good." The agent pulled out a pair of handcuffs. "Damien Rinaldi, you are being detained for questioning in connection with federal racketeering charges and your association with the Vescari family." "What?" I gasped. My leg's weak. "He helped you. He just "That's for the lawyers to decide, ma'am," the agent said, pulling Damien's good arm behind his back. I watched them lead him away, Santo, the bishop, and Damien, all 3 in cuffs. Damien looked back at me, just once. His face was calm, resigned. "It's okay, Ava," he said, his voice loud enough for me to hear over the wind. "This is the only way." I watched him go. Realizing the truth, Brandon's trap hadn't just caught the sharks. It had caught my anchor, too. The blizzard at Navy Pier gave way to the antiseptic chill of the federal justice system. The world, which had been loud with gunshots and wind, became agonizingly quiet. Santo Vescari and his enforcer, the bishop, were swallowed by the system, buried under an avalanche of charges. My grainy cell phone video, combined with Rosa Rinaldi's hard-won evidence, was an airtight case. They were gone. But Damien was not. He was the gray area. He was the Rinaldi who hadn't started the fire, but whose name was synonymous with the shadows. The weeks that followed were a slow, agonizing grind of depositions, lawyers and windowless rooms. Damien's lawyers, a team that cost more per hour than I used to make in a year, proposed what they called the Rinaldi Transformation Accord. It wasn't a plea. It was a corporate surrender. They offered to divest the entire Rinaldi logistics import and wine division. They would open their supply chains to federal audit permanently. They would establish a multi-million-dollar fund to compensate victims of Vescari's network a tacit apology for their own family's sins. They would create a new community job fund. In exchange, the U.S. Attorney's Office would grant leniency to the man who had initiated the reform, Damien. My testimony was the pivot point. The government needed me for the Vescari conviction. Damien's lawyers needed me for his character. I sat at a long, polished table. The assistant U.S. attorney across from me, a woman with tired eyes and a sharp suit, looked at me like I was a puzzle. "Miss Monroe, you're painting a confusing picture. You allege, Mr. Vescari's organization targeted you, but you were also present as an employee, no less at an illegal, non-sanctioned sting operation run by Mr. Rinaldi. Who are you a victim of exactly?" I looked her dead in the eye. My hands were steady. I was done shaking. "I'm a victim of Vescari," I said, my voice clear and low. "I am a witness to Mr. Rinaldi." "That's a fine line." "It's a very clear line," I countered. "When I was at the Calumet warehouse fire, the one the bishop started, we found one of Vescari's own guards, overcome by smoke. Damien's instinct." I glanced at him, sitting at the end of the table, silent, his arm still in a sling, was to leave him. He was the enemy. But he didn't. He listened to me. He helped me drag that man to safety. Santo Vescari would have let him burn. I leaned forward. When the bishop had us cornered and raised his weapon, Damien Rinaldi didn't hide. He didn't protect his ledgers. He shoved me behind a steel barrel and took the bullet that was meant for me. At Navy Pier, his only priority was the hostage, my mother. He exposed himself to fire to create a diversion so she could escape. He didn't escalate the violence. He absorbed it. I looked over at Rosa, who was watching me, her expression unreadable. And Rosa Rinaldi, her dead man's switch wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. She was willing to burn her own family's 70-year history, to hand you their past, to save 2 innocent people. These are not the actions of a family clinging to the old ways. These are the actions of a family desperately trying to build a new one. The next day, it was Brandon's turn. I wasn't there, but the fallout was seismic. He was, briefly, a hero. He was the cop who, acting on a tip, helped the feds trap a major crime boss. But the discovery process also unearthed his methods. He confessed. He admitted to everything. He admitted to running Damien's plates without cause. He admitted to harassing me, his ex-girlfriend. And then, the bomb he admitted to placing a non-departmental, illegal GPS tracking device on my cleaning cart at the Lakeview Grand. He had used it to follow my movements for weeks. My blood ran cold when I heard it. He hadn't just been a jealous ex. He had actively stalked me. Brandon Keller, the PR golden boy, was done. He lost his coveted position as the department spokesperson. He was demoted, put on administrative leave, and faced a mountain of internal investigations. He'd broken the law to soothe his own bruised ego. But in that deposition, he did one final, decent thing. He confirmed my entire story. He corroborated the link between Vescari, the Blue Shield Fund, and Alexa Hart's father's political machine. He finally stopped protecting his pride and, for the first time, truly acted like a cop. He protected the case. The sentencing was quiet, almost dull. Santo Vescari and the bishop were handed sentences that ensured they would never see the outside of a federal prison again. Then, the judge addressed Damien. He accepted the Rinaldi transformation accord. Damien Rinaldi was sentenced to 24 months of probation, with a full-time federal monitor assigned to him personally. He was banned, for life, from ever participating in the wine, spirits, or auction industries. Rinaldi Logistics was ordered to sign a public, ironclad code of compliance. He was free, but he was tethered. My life was collateral damage. My suspension from the event company became a permanent termination. The conflict of interest was now a material witness in a federal organized crime case. I was toxic. 2 days after the sentencing, Rosa Rinaldi called me. "Ava," she said. Her voice was clipped. "All business. The fund is active. The compensation initiative. We need a community coordinator, someone to manage the victim claims and oversee the new job placements. We need someone the community might actually trust, someone who isn't us." I was silent. She was offering me a job. "You're qualified," she continued. "You know how to manage inventory, you know how to navigate bureaucracy, and you know what it's like to be on the other side of this. It's yours, if you want it." I took the job. My first act as community coordinator for the Rinaldi Transformation Fund was to file a claim on behalf of my mother. I got her transferred to a private clinic with better machines and a new dialysis schedule. For the first time in 3 years, the mountain of medical debt that had defined my life began to shrink. I wasn't rich, but I could breathe. I used the fund's tuition reimbursement program and enrolled in night classes, studying for a certificate in nonprofit management. I didn't see Damien. It was an unspoken rule. I was now an employee of the fund his company was legally forced to create. He was under federal supervision. Any contact would be a conflict of interest. It would look like collusion, like a payoff. There was no passionate reunion. There was no kiss. The man who had faced down the bishop for me, the man who had held my mother's hand, was suddenly separated from me by a wall of lawyers and federal mandates. But about 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed. It was late, just past 11 p.m., a blocked number. I answered. "Ava." His voice was quiet, hesitant, stripped of the command I was used to. My heart did a stupid, painful flip. "I'm here, Damien." A long pause. I could hear him breathe. "I just called to see if your mother is she doing well." "She is," I whispered, looking out my small apartment window at the city lights. "Her new clinic it's better. The doctors are very attentive." "That's good." "Thank you, Damien." "It wasn't me," he said quickly, almost defensively. "It was the fund. Rosa's doing. I'm not allowed to be involved in its operations." "I know." We stayed on the line, the silence stretching, but it wasn't awkward, it was necessary. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I have a federal agent sitting in my outer office," he said, and I heard the ghost of a dry laugh. "I have to log every call I make. I'm learning to love spreadsheets. And you—" "I'm learning, too," I said. "My nonprofit accounting class is brutal, but I think I'm good at it." "I knew you would be," he said, his voice soft. The calls continued, not every night, but once or twice a week. That same blocked number, always after 11. We never talked about the shooting, or the fire, or the trial. We talked about my classes. He talked about the headaches of logistics, the parts of the business he was still allowed to run. It wasn't the possessive grip of a mafia boss. It wasn't the desperate plea of a woman in a lobby. It was just kindness. It was the man who had bandaged a boy's hand, checking in on the woman who had saved his life. In the Chicago papers, the Rinaldi Accord was the story of the month. Mafia transformation. One headline read, "Can the Rinaldi wolf change its spots?" asked another. The city was holding its breath, watching this public experiment in redemption, wondering if it was all just a high-priced PR stunt. I was holding my breath, too. 1 year, 12 months, 365 days. That's how long it took for the city to stop holding its breath. My late-night, blocked number calls with Damien had become a quiet ritual, a fragile thread connecting two worlds that weren't allowed to touch. His probation was still active. a 24-month sentence, the Federal Monitor. A humorless man Damien referred to as my chaperone was a permanent shadow in his life. Rinaldi Logistics passed its final audit. Rosa Rinaldi, true to her ironclad nature, was officially named president of the board. She had successfully navigated the company through the storm, cutting away the poison limbs of the wine division and cauterizing the wounds. Damien's new title was Director of Transformation. It was a fancy, corporate-speak invention that meant he had zero financial authority. He couldn't sign a check for $1. He was, in essence, the company's conscience, a watchdog in a cage he had helped build, tasked with ensuring the ethics of their supply chain. I had found my own transformation. My job at the Rinaldi Compensation Fund had become my mission. After earning my nonprofit management certificate at night, with a 3.9 GPA, I'd use the fund's resources to open a small, 2-room office in Pilsen, the neighborhood where my mother had raised me. I called it the Pilsen Second Chance Job Club. We focused on helping young men and women, most of whom had their own histories with the justice system, find stable work. Above the door, I hung a simple wooden sign I'd painted myself, "Work with Dignity." My mother was stable. Her new dialysis schedule at the private clinic, paid for by the fund, had worked wonders. The mountain of debt that had suffocated me for years was finally, blessedly gone. Even Brandon Keller found a different kind of redemption. His career as a police officer was over, a casualty of his illegal stalking and jealousy. He'd started a small private security firm. I'd heard he'd been working for free 1 weekend a month, providing security for community events, including, in a twist of irony, the street fair my job club was sponsoring. He was trying to atone. We never spoke. We didn't need to. Our first job fair was on a blistering Saturday in July. I was running on 4 hours of sleep and a gallon of bad coffee. My hair stuck to the back of my neck. We were understaffed, and the rental company had, of course, shorted us 1 table. "Ava, I don't know what to do," my assistant, Maria, called out, flapping a clipboard. "The keynote speaker needs a table for his materials, and we're just out." I sighed, shielding my eyes from the sun. "It's fine. I'll figure it out." I turned, and he was just there. Damien. He wasn't in a $4,000 suit. He was wearing a pair of worn jeans and a plain, dark gray polo shirt that strained slightly across his shoulders. His left arm was no longer in a sling, but I knew from our calls that it still ached when the weather turned, 50 yards away, in a black government sedan. I could see the outline of his chaperone, looking bored and hot. Damien walked past the check-in desk, his eyes finding me. He saw the frantic look on Maria's face, saw the empty space where a table should be. He didn't ask. He didn't wait to be invited. He just walked over to the stack of heavy, folded tables against the wall, grabbed one with his good arm, and lifted it. "Where do you need this, Ava?" he asked, his voice quiet, matter of fact. I stared. The man who had commanded the city's shadows, who had taken a bullet meant for me, was now volunteering as event staff. "The corner," I stammered, pointing, "by the beverage station." He nodded, and he set up the table. Then he went back and grabbed a box of bottled water and started hauling it, crate by crate, to the station for the next 3 hours. He just worked. He taped down electrical cords. He set up rows of folding chairs. He offered an arm to an elderly woman looking for the restroom. He stood in the food line with the other volunteers, patiently waited for a hot dog, and said thank you to the person who served him. He was just a man with discipline. As the day wound down and the crowd thinned, he found me by the sign-in sheet. He looked tired, and there was a streak of dirt on his face, but his eyes were clear. "You've built something incredible here, Ava," he said, nodding toward my Work with Dignity sign. "We're trying," I said, my voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. "It's a start." He looked at me, really looked at me, the sounds of the fair fading around us. "When I met you," he said, his voice low, "in that hotel lobby, I thought I was better than men like Santo Vascari, but I still thought like him. I thought I could possess you to protect you. I thought I could buy your safety. I thought I could buy you peace." He shook his head, a small, self-deprecating movement. "I've had a lot of time to think this past year. I know now I can't buy you peace. I can't give it to you. That's not how it works." He stepped a fraction closer, and the air between us was electric, but it wasn't the frantic, desperate energy of that first night. It was calm. "But what I can do, Ava," he said, and his gaze was unwavering, "is have the discipline to do the work, the discipline to earn the right to stand beside you while you build your own." My heart, which I thought had been permanently scarred, felt full. He wasn't offering to save me. He was offering to stand with me. 6 more months passed. The snow was falling again. Damien's 24 months of probation were officially over. His chaperone was gone. The Rinaldi Transformation Fund was holding its first anniversary gala back at the Lakeview Grand Hotel. I was the one running the event. I wasn't in a black polyester uniform. I was wearing a simple, floor-length dress of dark green velvet, the same color Alexa Hart had worn. I'd bought it on sale. Damien was there. He was wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo, and he looked every inch the powerful man he had been born to be. But when he looked at me, there was no calculation in his eyes, only warmth. We found ourselves standing near the lobby, right by the same marble pillar where I had run to him, where I had whispered that desperate, 5-minute lie. A state senator was approaching, his eyes curious, already formulating the question of how the fund's community director and the reformed heir apparent fit together. I felt Damien tense beside me, the old instinct, the need to control the narrative, to shield, to manage. I smiled, a slow, real smile. I reached out and put my hand on his tuxedo-clad arm. I leaned in, just as I had done 2 years before, my lips brushing his ear. "If we need to," I whispered, my voice playful. "We can pretend, just for them, just to make them feel comfortable." He turned, looking down at me, and a genuine, beautiful smile transformed his face. The wolf was gone. There was only the man. "But for us," I finished, my voice dropping, "only real." He didn't kiss me. Not there. Not in the lobby, with the cameras and the whispers and the ghosts of our past. Later, much later, after the speeches were done and the last guest had left, I was in the main service corridor, checking the cleanup crew's final walkthrough. The air smelled of industrial cleaner and spilled champagne. I heard his footsteps on the tile behind me. I turned, and he was just standing there, his bow tie undone, his jacket off. "Ava Monroe," he said, his voice rough. "Damien Rinaldi," I answered. He stepped forward. He didn't grab me. He didn't pull me. He just raised his hand, the one that had held my mother's arm, the one that had hauled tables, and he gently cupped my cheek. His hand was warm. This time, there was no lie. There was no camera. There was no audience. When he kissed me, it wasn't the staged warmth of a performance. It wasn't the desperate act of a rescue. It was just real. In the small lobby of the Pilsen Second Chance Job Club, there's a glass display case on the wall. Inside, on a small piece of velvet, sits a single, black chess piece, a rook. The bishop's calling card, the one he left on the hood of my destroyed car. Damien's lawyers had it retrieved from the police impound lot as personal effects. Sometimes, the young people who come in for help ask me what it is. I tell them it's a reminder. It's a reminder that the world will try to tell you that you only have one path, that you have to move in a straight line, destroying anything that gets in your way. But I tell them, that's a lie. You can always stop. You can always turn. You can choose to build, not break. You can choose, always, to be real. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where in the world you are listening from. Please share your thoughts and join the conversation in the comments below. We invite you to subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give us extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.